All right, so today we're gonna go ahead and make a stock from our chicken carcass. So the last video I posted was how to roast a chicken. So you wanna save the carcass and any bones and stuff from it. What you didn't see me do is I picked off most of the meat and reserved it because we're gonna use that to make our chicken noodle soup tomorrow. So anyway, what you wanna do is take your stock pot, go ahead and put your chicken carcass and bones and everything in there. I like to leave some meat on it because it makes it a little richer. Then we want to fill this with water. You want to fill it a good way. You want the chicken to be completely covered. I mean, the liquid is what's turning into your stock. So if you don't put a lot of liquid in there, you're going to end up with no stock. I mean, some of it cooks off as you're boiling it. So we're going to fill it up. So while I'm filling it up, I'm going to give you a little tip. What I do throughout the week when I'm cooking, if a recipe calls for onions or carrots or celery, any of the ends, the onion butts, the onion skin, the celery butts, the carrot peelings, I keep a gallon or quart bag and I put my trimmings in that bag and then I store it in the freezer throughout the week so that when I'm ready to make the stock, I have all the trimmings to go in there. You want to keep it in the freezer though, because if you keep it in the fridge, they'll rot, they'll get slimy, and they'll go bad. All right, so that's about enough liquid. We're gonna stick that on the stove. Here's my bag of trimmings from the last week. I'm gonna dump that in there. And then I like to take an extra onion. You're just gonna cut it into quarters. Stick that whole thing in the pot. These are some old carrots that are just kind of soft at this point. They were sitting in the fridge, so I'm gonna use those. Some celery that we didn't use. Same thing, I'm gonna cut it up, stick it in there. All right. I don't have any fresh garlic in the house today. So I'm gonna take minced garlic. I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons. I'm gonna dump it in there. And then I'm gonna take 1 tablespoon of salt. Sprinkle it around in there. And then we'll give that a little bit of a stir. Okay. What you want to do is cover it, bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we'll move on to the next step. So go ahead and pause your video now and we'll be back with the next step after that happens. All right, so this sucker is at a full-on boil, as you can see. It's also filled to the brim. Anyway, what you want to do once it comes to a boil, reduce it down to a simmer. You want it to barely simmer, and you want to take your lid and you want to cock it to the side to where it's not fully covered. You want steam to be able to escape, and you want it to cook down. You want some of it to evaporate so that it turns into kind of a concentrated stock, which is what we're cooking. Periodically, you want to check on it. If a lot of foam starts to build up on the top of it, I already kind of scooped some of mine off, but you'll see foam build up. You can spoon that off because it ends up just turning into like oil, which makes your stock oily, and you don't want that when you're cooking with it. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to set a timer for 4 hours, and we'll let this simmer for 4 hours, and then we'll come back for the completion of it. All right, guys, so we're at the end of our stock. It's done. It's ready to come out. If you notice, when we started out, the water level was up to here. I mean, it was almost boiling over. And it's reduced, which is great. That's what we want to see. So we're going to turn the heat off. We're going to remove it from the heat. We're going to walk it over. So I have a colander over a bowl here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dump this out slowly. I'm going to check my bowl. Let this strain. Slow going, that's all right. We got big chunks of meat and veg. That's a good thing. We're gonna keep going. Dump it all in there. All right. Ooh, looks amazing, right? Like to eat that. All right. So we're gonna strain all this into the bowl. Now when you use a colander, it has larger holes than like a sieve or a cheesecloth or something like that. So you're gonna wanna strain it with a colander first to get all the big chunks out. And then we're gonna take a second bowl and we're gonna pass this broth through something finer like this, a finer mesh. These are cheap. You can find these at the dollar store, okay? So don't think you need all these expensive fancy tools to do this. It's cheap. You just gotta shop around. Look on Amazon. You can get one for $2.99 Prime, whatever. See, so see all that it filtered out? That's great. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this broth, I'm gonna pour it back into this bowl. It has a pour spout. And then we're gonna move over here and I'm gonna pour all of my broth into mason jars. So what I like to do is I like to take my stock and put it into small pre-portioned mason jars. I don't like to store it in one big container because what if I have a recipe that only calls for 1 or 2 cups? I don't want to have to defrost 10 cups of stock to get 1 or 2 cups out of it. What I will recommend is that when you fill it, you're going to want to fill the stock to about here because as it freezes, it expands. And if you overfill it, which I have done, the top of the jar will bow and the glass will actually crack and break and then it's inedible. So pour your stock into these mason jars and then store it in the freezer. Tomorrow I'm going to post a video on how to make chicken noodle soup with this stock. If you want to make chicken noodle soup in the next 2 or 3 days with this stock, keep it in the fridge so you don't have to defrost it. If not, put it in the freezer and then defrost it when you're ready to make the chicken noodle soup. But this should yield at least 4 pint jars, 2 1.5 jars. And if there's a little left over, you can put it in a Tupperware or something. If you go on Amazon, pint jars, like a case of them, a flat of them, you can get the off-brand. You don't have to get Ball. They're really, really cheap. Anyway, that's it. So now you've made chicken stock, and your house should smell incredible. And tomorrow we will make chicken. So Will's making a point. I was wrong. So what are these, Will? These are
6-ounce jars.
These
are
6-ounce
half-pint
jars. So
that's a pint jar.
So these are half-pint jars, and these are pint jars. So I misspoke, and Will just wanted me to point that out to you guys. So that's it. We'll see you tomorrow for chicken noodle soup. Good night.